Grief Opened the Door to Heaven by Kim Droptiny, Chapter 31, Pearls from Heaven. We must begin to believe that God, in the mystery of prayer, has entrusted us with a force that can move the heavenly world and bring its power down to earth. Andrew Murray. Our next stop was lovely Copenhagen, where we worked with a small church that is almost smack in the middle of a large hippie commune called Christiania. The church is merely tolerated, as most of Christiania's inhabitants are of a New Age mindset. Drugs are sold behind veiled curtains, and the smell of marijuana is everywhere. It was there, in Denmark, that we first experimented with a new method of evangelism. We got out watercolor paints and lots of paper and asked the Lord what He would want communicated. We might hear Him say, "I am the living water. If you drink from me, you will never thirst again." Then we would paint a picture of maybe a river, and then once the picture was dried, we would write the phrase on the picture. We made a whole bunch of cards with all different things we felt Jesus wanted to say. We set up a table just outside of the church, where a lot of tourists and hippies walked along the path just in front of the church, and placed a big sign that said, "Prophetic Postcards, Jesus is the Medium." We laid about 10 cards face down on the table, and when someone approached us, we would ask them to pick which card they thought was theirs without peeking at the pictures. More often than not, they were astounded at the words and would say, "This card is just for me." Our handmade postcards opened the door to share the gospel, and word spread around the commune that we were there. We loved using our creative talents to share the gospel. It was really a fun time. While in Copenhagen, I received an email from the mother of one of Gabe's best friends from high school. Gabe had met her son, Kyle, who was a year younger than Gabe, in band. Kyle stood out. He had only one leg, having lost it to cancer, and he loved Jesus. He was a light in that drug-infested community where we lived. Gabe and Kyle formed a bond almost instantly and started a rock band together. After high school, while Gabe was in his second stint at Teen Challenge, we received the sad news that Kyle had gone home to be with the Lord at only 19 years old. Gabe was granted permission to leave his program for a weekend to attend the funeral. Gabe was one of the pallbearers. Kyle's funeral was a great testimony of his deep faith in the Lord. I imagined Kyle being one of the first people to meet Gabe at heaven's gates. Kyle's mom, Connie, and I had met up just after Gabe's memorial service in the United States and shed tears together. She told me that when Kyle's younger brother heard of Gabe's passing, he cried for 3 days and had to take off work. I was stunned. Gabe had no idea how much he had been loved. I smiled inside when I realized he did know now. "Hey, Kim," Connie's email began. "Been thinking of you and found this verse today that I felt I needed to share with you. Since many of the people had not purified themselves, the Levites had to slaughter their Passover lamb for them to set them apart for the Lord. Most of those who came from Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun had not purified themselves. But King Hezekiah prayed for them, and they were allowed to eat the Passover meal anyway, even though this was contrary to the requirements of the law. For Hezekiah said, 'May the Lord, who is good, pardon those who decide to follow the Lord, the God of their ancestors, even though they are not properly cleansed for the ceremony.' And the Lord listened to Hezekiah's prayer and healed the people. 2 Chronicles 30:17-20. As I read those verses, I wasn't sure what she or the Lord was trying to tell me, but I sensed that God was speaking to me in my continued angst over Gabe's eternal condition. At a Romanian youth camp where we had ministered a few months before, Brianna had a conversation with a young boy who, when he heard how Gabe died, he responded, "He can't be in heaven." Brianna didn't argue with him, but when she told me about it, I felt sad and confused. I began to wonder if everyone was thinking the same thing. To this day, I often feel embarrassed sharing how Gabe died with other believers. I find myself saying, "But he was a Christian." And then I start thinking that they are thinking, "Yeah, right." In my reply to Connie, I asked her what she meant, and her answer so verified what Brianna and I had thought all along. The Lord looked into his heart. She wrote back to me, "I just believe that God is greater than any sin Gabe was involved in, and that Gabe was truly wanting to be right with God. And in spite of Gabe's weaknesses and inability within himself to stop using, God still saw his heart and understood his struggle and his desire to be free. I just know that God is merciful and kind and that he wanted to end the torment that plagued Gabe and give him peace. I'm not sure that this is from the Lord, but that is what my heart and spirit is feeling. I think the desire to be right with God supersedes any sin that Gabe was caught in." I had not told Connie of my lingering doubts about Gabe's salvation. Abba was more than gracious in sending me that message through Connie. The Lord never became impatient, angry, or exasperated with my fickle heart that needed so much assurance. How good of God to use Connie to speak the exact words he wanted me to hear, and I thank him for her obedience. If you feel God nudging you to share something that you feel he put in your heart for someone else, share it. You never know how God might use you in someone's life. Thank you for listening to this part of my story, and I hope you'll continue listening in chapter 32. God bless you.